Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. I'm Kevin Koym. This is the VO Weekly. Today, we have another community conversation. We're going to have an interesting conversation with a handful of people about the refugee situation in Afghanistan. Now, we'll get into that during the actual call. Just as a reminder, part of what we do during the VO Weekly, the Venture Outfitter Weekly, this is a program from Tech Ranch. It's all about how is it that we can, as a group of entrepreneurs, and it's a group of entrepreneurs around the world, how is it that we can actually interact with all these different people and do what's called in corporations open innovation? But when you bring a group of entrepreneurs together, you can create a whole different animal. For those of y'all that haven't been here before, we have 4 different types of programs. One of them is we'll typically have someone like a VIP of some group that we're learning from. As an example, 2 weeks ago, we had the Secretary of Innovation and Technology of the country of El Salvador here. And you're going to see a common theme across the different things. One of the issues we talked about was immigration and how to take on immigration in that. The second type of meeting is we have your very tactical, valuable knowledge for entrepreneurs. How do you do this and make it simple for me to actually, take action immediately? The third is just a community conversation where we're working our own ventures. That is, we put people on the hot seats, we give feedback and all sorts of stuff. We interact with each other about what's going on in the venture. And then the fourth is we say, like today, we're going to take on an issue. We don't know if we're going to find the answer, but we're going to actually bind together a lot of different ideas and have a conversation. So that's today's community conversation. And we've had some really effective ones in the past on a variety of different issues I'm excited about today. So welcome to the Venture Outfitter. Venture Outfitter is the program that I started after Tech Ranch decided to get out of the co-working business, since we started working with entrepreneurs all around the world. And we've worked with more than 6,500 entrepreneurs, from 42 countries in country and 22 different countries. It didn't make sense to try to open up a co-working place and all that sort of places. So we got rid of all of our co-working, including here in Austin. We're partnered up with a bunch of different other places and launched the Venture Outfitter. For those of you that hadn't heard about this before. Our sponsor for today is DualWorks. DualWorks is Linda Blackman and her team, who was in Venture Force 17, one of the Tech Ranch programs. She actually bought out the co-working space to take it over, and she runs her business here, has all sorts of offers for entrepreneurs, including offers below the $200 mark for entrepreneurs that are international, that need a point of presence in the United States for running their business. And so take advantage of that. Ask us for details if you'd like. Just to advertise a little bit, next week, we're going to have one of those tactical knowledges, tactical type of knowledge base type of things. Stephen Ayers, who's an investment manager, he's actually a guy that I've known since college, and he's managed my finances in the past, is actually going to say, hey, as entrepreneurs, wealth management, what you should be doing even before you have an exit. That's going to be on September 2nd. And then on September 16th, we're going to have one of the Tech Ranch consultants that does a lot of work around Tech Ranch, Chris Hughes, will tell us how do we leverage LinkedIn for taking on, like, getting the word out. As an example, some of you all saw the short 1.5 minute video I posted on LinkedIn about Afghanistan and about opening up these conversations. And based on some tactics that he actually told me about, that Chris told me about, we got to over 1,100 views within 48 hours. And so it got a lot of, there's some interesting stuff that I see Chris teaching me and other entrepreneurs what to do about LinkedIn and how to leverage LinkedIn. And so we're going to hear from him. That'll be September 16th. Join us. So we've been connecting around the community. A lot of times during this time, during this time or this slide, part of what we do is we put one of the entrepreneurs on the hot seat and interact with him or her and give feedback from the community. For today, since I think we're going to hear about some of the startups in the middle of the program, I'm going to go ahead and we'll not use this part of the talk. I just want to make sure that you know that at some point, if you want to review part of your startup, you want to share it with, and you want to get feedback from all around the world, this is a great place to do it. We actually do this for VO network members. That is, we have a larger community that we allow into the door because I don't want to have any walls between us and the entrepreneurs being able to take advantage of it. But because there are a little bit of coordination cost, this is available for VO network members or if you're involved in one of the subcommittees around Tech Ranch, take advantage of it. This is truly one of the things that we're trying to make a big difference on, and so that entrepreneurs can actually leverage the muscle of our community to build their ventures forward. And a lot of times I'll do Ask Me Anything sessions myself to donate some of my own scar tissue to your startups, because there's absolutely no reason that you should have anywhere near as much scar tissue as I have when it comes to building companies. Our service offerings, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I did last week. If you want to go into more depth about what this is all about and what's happening around Tech Ranch, very simply, we have a bunch of community events. Some of it's virtual for what we call a campfire. Campfire is the best networking event that you've ever been to, whether you go to one of them physically or you go to you come to one of the virtual ones, because you can leverage the muscle of who's in the room. And a lot of times, if you have 120 people listening to your venture and you need to get a door open, that's actually really valuable. We don't charge for that. Take advantage of the community. If you're not on the community site, you can go ahead and go to it. In a few slides, we'll make sure that we post the URL into the chat. It's not going to stay wide open for everybody forever. But it is for right now. The VO network level, this is we do have an offer for that. It's $99 a month. And you get all sorts of third-party leverage and stuff like that. After you go through our process, we can get you access to AWS invites and stuff like that, so you can get leverage for your startup. There is a process, though. Like as an example, AWS, Amazon Web Services, doesn't want just anybody to get these free credits. And so as part of that, and the other vendors that we work with, we have to have a little bit of a barrier, and we try to make the bar low, but there still is a bar. And so that's what that network offer is for. Then there's programs, Venture Start, Venture Forth. We will be launching the Venture Forth. We have several people that are in the Pioneer program, which is our US market entry program. And we'll talk more about that in the future. Then investment support, and then portfolio. Portfolio is the different, where one of the venture partners or several of them are directly involved in a heavy way in your venture. All right, all that being said, take a deep breath and let's talk about what's happening on the other side of the world. What I want to tell you about really quick to set the context, we're going to have a community conversation. I will turn off the slides in just a second to kind of set your expectations. But what's happening is obviously a lot. I mean, I think everyone and their dog knows that there is a humanitarian crisis happening in Kabul, actually happening across Afghanistan right now, with the collapse of the government there and the Afghani army. And I don't really want to have a discussion about the political side of this. I don't really want to have a discussion about the military side of it. I wanted to have a discussion with how do we as a community of entrepreneurs respond. And so I've been really frustrated about this. And just because I'm like, you see some of the pictures, I don't know if you saw the airplanes that were taking off, that people were so desperate that one of the photos I saw, I'm just going to describe it, I won't share it, had people falling off of an airplane that had taken off to their death. And, it talks about there's a level of desperation that is palatable from however many thousand miles away. And so I was really frustrated about this, and I was kind of quite upset about it, especially this last week, for those of you all that know me personally, that, I wanted to actually do something about it. Now, interesting enough, a few nights ago, On Monday night, I had just gone mountain biking around Town Lake here in Austin, Texas, and I was over at Whole Foods grabbing a hamburger because I needed something to eat. And I got a call from one of our members. Now, I'm not going to disclose who he is. He is a Venture Forth grad from a previous Venture Forth around, 20 Venture Forths ago. And he said, hey, Kevin, I know that you've got these entrepreneurs that have all sorts of different solutions. Will you actually send out the call and get different opportunities? Like there's like the parties that are responsible for getting people out of harm's way were caught pretty much, I don't know, I don't like using the metaphor of with their pants down, but that's essentially what happened. And the thing that happened was, instead of criticizing, most people at this point that I see politically are just criticizing the situation versus doing something about it. This guy that I'm talking about, who is embedded in, I don't know exactly where at this point, he had a really cool startup when he was at Tech Ranch, and then he's now doing much, he's doing stuff inside of the government. And truth be told, I don't know exactly what, but he said, hey, we just need help with the data problem. As I was understanding it, that a lot of the issue is not just the issues about once you have someone inside of the airport, getting them to some other part of the world. That's a, difficult task. And they're getting up to 9,000 people per day out. But it's also you have people that are 3 days out travel-wise from the airport that need to get out of harm's way, that are trying to figure out how do they send messages to people at the airport so they can get across that gate to do all sorts of other stuff. Can tell you more about that, but we'll leave that for part of the discussion because I've got some more details I can share, and I'd like to hear from you all as well. But the main thing about it is not just in responding to what's happening to Kabul right now, but more generally, I think that we've seen such an uptick of issues of getting people out of harm's way that I want to talk about that. Obviously, one of the reasons that I had the conversation with the minister or the Secretary of Innovation and Technology for the country of El Salvador is how can we help support situations where we take on the refugee situation or the immigrant situation of why would people, I was in El Salvador a couple of weeks ago. It's an amazing country. It's beautiful. It feels very relaxed. It's, all that sort of stuff. How do we actually set it up where people don't want to leave? How can we actually do that versus, having these political arguments in this country that are just, and spending all of our money in other ways? How do we actually, support that? So I'm not only thinking about Kabul, but I also want to talk about immigration but more fundamentally is how is it as entrepreneurs that we help people get out of harm's way and build startups to do that. One of the examples that came out of the situation, one of our other members that's working on a project that I'd had a little bit of hand on like actually more than 2 years ago, but he's now taken it much farther, is taking on the issues about how to just leverage the most basic type of situation, basic tools for getting people like, how do you identify, authenticate someone, and then validate that they're one of the people, identify who are you, authenticate, are you really that person, validate that the person should be one of the people that gets on an airplane. That's a complex task, especially in a low tech type of environment. And so this is one of the programs that came out. Open innovation, one of the things that you do is instead of like, innovating inside an organization, you say, hey, tell me all your ideas. And this is one of the ideas that when I sent this out to the Tech Ranch network that came back. And so, and I'm just so you know, part of what's happening behind the scenes is we're in the process of connecting people behind the scenes into that guy that I'm talking about, as well as some of the other people that I got pulled into a 10:30 Monday night call about this. And I want our conversation about this to not just be about the Afghanis, but how, with all the climate change, the stuff that's happening, with all the immigration issues where people are having to, seek refuge in other parts of the world. I think there's something that our community, with just this little experiment that I did, can actually do about it. So the question is, can we innovate people out of harm's way? I know we have a number of different people that have experimented with this, that have built interesting solutions around this. Part of what I want to do is, my style. I love hearing from y'all. See, I've got more stuff to share myself, but what I want to do is, how do we do that? Let's discuss, how do we innovate people out of harm's way and figure out different ways to go forward. What I want to do is I want to experiment with everyone. I know one of the people that I'll get to start, like right now we have a Marine who used to be, at one of the embassies. We have, a couple different healthcare people that are on right now as well that have actually done this before, that are working on ventures like David Potus. I'm going to definitely call on you with talking about the virtual hospital, because, healthcare is one of the things you need in the value chain of emerging. We have Joel Odd, who used to be at the state of Texas. He was one of the guys that was look at all the security situations around the state of Texas and what's happening. He's worked on the border. He's done all sorts of other stuff. He's done an interesting project in Jamaica about helping people deal with some of the issues there that they're up against. And so, and then there's other insight that you all know. I see Franz is here today as well. Franz is actually in Haiti and can tell us a little bit more, give us an update on what he mentioned last week about what's happening. Let's have our conversation. We'll interact back and forth, but who would like to kick it off? I'd like to just see. Yeah, go ahead, Joel. Why don't you tell us a little bit about background, what you're looking at, what you're thinking about, and what you think might be possible, especially in the context of how do we innovate people out of harm's way.
I will date myself. After graduate school, I had been a Marine in 1979. I turned down an opportunity as an intern in Scotland to go to Uganda to drill water wells and run a refugee camp. Lost a wife for your service,
especially
lost a wife over that, but that's something. Ever since then, I've been working different projects to link process, technology, and people. And my gospel is pretty much consumed in Niall Ferguson's 6 killer apps. If you're not familiar with Ferguson's 6 killer apps, there's a TED talk on it. I will read them off to you. And this is how I would innovate people out of desperation. 1, competition. 2, the scientific revolution. 3, property rights. 4, modern medicine. 5, the consumer society. It sounds harsh, but it's not. 6, work ethic. Those are Ferguson's 6 killer apps. I will not go into them here on talk. Go to the TED talk. You can find it. It's Niall Ferguson's 6 killer apps.
Someone grab that and throw it into the chat while we're doing this. It'd be great to see.
Now, I will give you a very small pericope project I'm working right now. It's brand new. And Franz actually impacts maybe you. Very simple idea. A friend of mine came to me 2 nights ago and said, what are we going to do about the dead spots in the ocean, especially in the Gulf? I said, I'm not sure that's my job. He said, but we need to do something. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to cultivate bamboo that's native across the Caribbean. We're going to lash it together in very large, flat rows. We're going to seed it with seaweed, roll it up, and bind it with iron wire. Iron wire is important. Pay attention to that. Then we're going to tow it into the areas where the current will carry it into the dead zones, or we're going to have the Coast Guard deliver it. We're working on that. Here's the benefits of it. You put people in very low-income environments to work cultivating, harvesting, and building the mats out of bamboo. Bamboo's already native to the area. It grows quickly. We stop erosion. We stop water runoff. Haiti has lost 3/4 of its coral to soil runoff. We can stop that. We can restore some of the coral and sea life around Haiti. Okay, other islands doing the same thing. So you build these mats. You seed them with seaweed, and the specific seaweed, I can go into the list on it. Woods Hole's got an excellent list on it. Tow them into the dead zone. What dead zones are, they're oxygen-deprived areas that move across the ocean, and they literally suffocate everything in their path, everything on the bottom, everything in the full thermocline. So if you can build something that starts putting oxygen back into that environment, build it cheaply and in large quantity. That's the process. How do we pay for it? We're going out and doing basically a crowdsourced funding for it. You get your name on the side of the raft. It goes floating off. It's got an iridium tracker on it. The iridium tracker posts to a website, and you can follow your raft.
Yeah,
That's
Iridium tractor, just so you know, that's just a way of another way of doing GPS type of tracking.
It's
just
GPS,
so you
but
know.
it's linked by satellite.
It's linked by satellites. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an idea in a nutshell. What we're trying to do is stop climate change, increase oxygenation in the dead zones, put people to work in low income coastal communities, stop erosion, and stop water runoff.
Yeah, when so the Joel and I every once in a while get to, we sing from the same hymnals back and forth to each other from the standpoint of that. The most important thing I want to point out is this ability to respond. The thing, the elements that Joel's talking about is the ability to just be able to respond with, here's a way of handling the following situation. You get crowdsourcing that funds the first part. You're creating an opportunity for the people that actually live in a certain locale, and then things happen from that. That's the most, for right now, for the theme of what I want to point to is that, Joel, I also know that you know a lot about what's happening in Afghanistan and other hotspots like that as well. Since there is kind of a real crisis that's got a sharp edge on it right now, what would you like? What's your 10 cents or $2 kind of background, opinion, thoughts? Like what is there anything that we as a group of entrepreneurs right now can throw out there?
There's a project called God Voice. I haven't got any funding yet, but the biggest thing I'm looking at on Afghanistan right now, talking to people who are calling me, we're sending planes in empty. Those planes going in should be carrying water and food. Because the biggest crisis right now inside the perimeter, there's no water and food.
That's interesting. Yeah, the people, there's literally thousands of people there, but with no resources.
Yeah, and that's one of the big crises. I've had 4 calls on that in the last 4 days.
And is there anything that those of us that don't necessarily have some way of convincing that Air Force general to put stuff on there? Is there anything that you can think that low-hanging fruit that maybe for lack of the right way of saying it, digital broom sweeping that could be done? Like for those of us that have a computer but don't have necessarily kind of access?
The only one that comes to mind is Samaritan's Purse, because they are actively trying to get food and water in there.
Got it.
And they are one of the most effective organizations for a dollar spent that I know of. If you're not familiar with them, they're from the Graham Foundation.
They're from where?
Billy Graham Foundation.
Billy Graham Foundation. If you get a chance, one of the things that we can do with the chat session, and I'll make sure that the chat gets transferred to the recording of this, there were at least 5 different people that said, hey, I really want to be on today, and that didn't get a chance to join. So I'd like to make sure we have those URLs available to available in the show notes for today. Thanks for your insight. Let's go ahead and bounce around a little bit. I'd like to actually continue. It looks like I see several of you that are off of mute. So Richard, did you have something you wanted to say first?
Not immediately. We've seen Europe struggle with the Syrian refugee crisis, and that doesn't bode well for Europe's ability to respond to what's going on in Afghanistan. And we know the European leaders are responding late and slow, and for whatever reason, we're not up to speed on America's plans. A very polite, well, we'll just leave it at that. But I just can't see a quick and easy fix to this. That's all.
Yeah, no, I don't think that there is going to be a quick and easy fix by any means. And but one of the things is what's clear is lots of money is being spent. One of the things that so in 2019, TechRanch signed an MOU with the state of Chihuahua, which is where, right on the border between Texas and Mexico. And Juarez is known as one of the cities where there's a lot of immigration that happens, illegal immigration in that area. And, I came up with some random ideas that now I kind of wish I kicked myself that I didn't push a little bit harder on, about how we can, when small amounts of money are handed to entrepreneurs like y'all, about what can come out of it innovation wise. And so that's one of the things that I'm like, I now have I don't know, I'm trying to think of a politically correct way of saying that I've got it, I've got my butt kicked. We'll say it that way, that it's time to go ahead and start pushing on this sort of stuff, because when I see the billions of dollars that are being spent, even just in the US, that haven't necessarily been spent very effectively on COVID response. And then what I know that you as entrepreneurs can actually do with even small resources to actually solve problems. One of the examples is one of the investors behind Icon, the company that 3D prints cement homes, is based here in Austin, Texas. His name is Kyle. Joel and I both know him from Falcon Ventures. They can 3D print a home for $4,000 in cement, and probably after they do it for a while, I bet you they're going to be able to get even less expensive. When you start imagining that you just have a bunch of desert land on the northern border between Chihuahua and Texas, and the ability to actually build a whole community for $1 million, and you've got something that's really livable, that ends up taking all the technology that y'all are building and solves the problem at the same time as giving you a test bed. There's something that can come out of that. Let's see. I noticed that Shelby is now Shelby is now reconnecting to audio. David Potes, I always like to call on you because you have a very special view on this as well. I know you're off of camera right now, but I'm wondering, are you in a position where you can actually come update us about what you're doing with a virtual hospital? It sounds like you've added another 6 hospitals to your application. Are you available to actually speak right now?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I just have to leave in like 4 minutes, something like that.
Sounds good. We'll get everything out of you right now. Tell us an update about your vision and your progress on and what you're building.
So yes, thank you. So we are building a virtual hospital here in Mexico, and what I mean by that is how we can leverage from digital innovation and digital tools to actually try to create a business model, or not business model, but a working operative model that actually works for the patient in healthcare, right? We're building it here in Mexico, but I mean, there's strong similarities in the issues that in global, what healthcare is around the world. Talking about access, talking about just patient engagement and follow-ups and things like that. So we are creating this virtual care center that actually tries to enhance those tools and enhance also the medical providers to create better services, better patient experience for the patients. And what we are aiming at is to use patient data and to use certain protocols in terms of following up with the patient's treatment, following up with any chronic disease they may have, and actually just following up with them and offering them home care, for example, just for COVID or whatever post surgery services that they may need. And so we're in launching this first phase that is specifically for primary care. That is something that here in Mexico we're not very accustomed to. So we're trying to enhance that so that we can also leverage from the Mexican Hospital Consortium that we are partnering up with. That is a group of 49 hospitals from one point of the country to another, from Tijuana to Cancun, and use that so that we can create a more integral health service, not only for telemedicine and virtual services, but also if they need to, they can, they actually have to go to a hospital, or they have to go see a medical specialist, they can actually also do that. So basically, we're trying to build this ecosystem that actually revolves around what the patient needs, but at the same time, we're trying to be one step further and using the patient data to offer them services very, very tailored to what their needs are.
That's cool. Thank you for the information. I know that you're going to be needing to leave pretty soon. And you had a couple of announcements. It sounded like you were going to be making sometime soon. Anything you want to share real quick with the group, just since we're about to lose you as you go to the next thing?
Yeah, we were supposed to make an announcement actually on Tuesday, but that had to be postponed for probably going to be the second week of September. Just some things that we need to figure out, but that's going to be the final date, because if we don't do it on the second week of September, it's going to go probably until next year, because then different activities come into place that makes it, end of the year and whatnot. So
anything you can give us, like a little, tease us a little bit with what the announcement's going to be?
Yeah, so basically it's the announcement of it's the press conference of the virtual hospital for here in Mexico. We're trying to create somewhat of noise here in the country, both for the healthcare sector, actors, but also for the population to know that they have this new type of service. They have access to this new type of service. So, and we're in that press conference, we're gonna probably make the announcement of a collaboration with a company from Argentina, and just the union between the virtual hospital and the Mexican Hospital Consortium.
That's perfect. So one of the things that imagine that anyone that has a phone, has access to, being able to have access to the first tier of healthcare. And a little bit, we're going to hear from Joel, and I'm going to put him on the spot so he can tell you how we can get access to the phones. Because a lot of people say, well, people don't have phones, but he'll talk a little bit about that as well. The thing that I want to make sure that I'm positioning that I don't see a lot of people thinking about, that a group of entrepreneurs can actually take on, is this whole value chain of, we'll call it refugees. And I hate to use the business term around refugees, but as an example, there's the application I showed a while ago, or I gave you just like a short synopsis about, here's how we get people to the gate at the airport and do it in a secure way. Okay, now we have these airplanes that are already being paid for by the American taxpayer. Okay, that's fine. That's what that's what I want those tax dollars to be used for, to get people to the next place. But as we start having, hundreds of thousands of people get resettled there, we need to get them healthcare. We got to get them food. It's all the shared prosperity things about, shared prosperity includes physical security, food security, biosecurity, healthcare, like the culturation process into the new place. One of the things I was always really impressed in the trip that I took to Norway is how Norway works with immigrants to that area. Like if someone comes into Norway, they have a whole process. Now it's a small country. They're only going to be able to take a handful of refugees out of this situation. But the truth is they got a pretty interesting process, and it got me thinking about this whole value chain. Any final comments that you'd like to make, David, about that? Since I know that you had said that you were going to be on and then need to step off. And I think you've got such a cutting edge solution for what's happening.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. Yeah, something that we've been talking about, and I mean, we talked about this about focusing here in the Mexico, US, and Central America, but this is something that we can also expand. We just have to figure out regulation issues and things like that. But with again, leveraging from digital tools, I think we can provide a lot of access to people that don't have access to healthcare. So actually, one of the projects we talked about is how we can use this technology and these resources to offer healthcare services and high quality healthcare services for immigrants in the US, but also for for example, here in Mexico or El Salvador or whatever country in Central America, for them to have access to healthcare, and they don't have to travel, they don't have to immigrate to other parts of the world, right? And this is something that we can definitely consider in terms of other parts of the world for refugees or For example, there have been some refugees from Afghanistan that are already coming here to Mexico. So, I mean, there's something to do there, definitely. There's a lot of opportunities.
Perfect. Well, and one of the things that's exciting about that is, like, as an example, Kim Johnson in the chat said, hey, why don't we approach the State Department and actually all these people that are staying on the other side of the border, one of the things that they need is exactly that. They need access to healthcare. If anyone has access to that person, I'll personally make the call. We're looking for the right points of contact into the conversation. I think the State Department right now is very distracted with what's happening in Afghanistan. But that being said, it's obviously large enough. It's just to handle both Mexico and Afghanistan at the same time. We would like to make that connection in. So anyone that has suggestions about that, please throw them out. Okay, well, David, we'd love to have you back. I know that you're going to have to step off at some point. Stick around with us as much as possible. Joel, you just shared a couple of URLs about the phones we were talking about, just so that anyone who's listening who said, well, we can't do that because those people don't have phones. Tell us about what you figured out.
Okay. One of the problems, one of my clients is the Rastafarian Church of the Caribbean, which is stranger than you can imagine. A Zoom call with those guys is like nothing else on the planet. But one of the issues they had, lack of phones. When we started working with them, 2 had bank accounts, 2 had email accounts. They weren't the same 2. So we started equipping them with phones. There's a company in Africa called Mara Phones. It is Israeli engineering, UAE money, Rwandan and South African workforce, and they build roughly the equivalent of a Samsung 10 phone. Their starting price is $100. Their top end phone is about $300. And they're especially good for other countries because they carry 2 different SIM cards. So you can actually run 2 different connectivities, AT&T and something in the islands, AT&T or Vodafone, different systems. They're cheap, they're durable, they're exceptionally well made. They feature Gorilla Phone, and I put them up against my Samsung 10 every day. I actually put my mother-in-law with one. So, and I put the link on how to find them. And that fast forwards to another thing. Phones, we think of them as, communications texting first. How many here are familiar? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of M-Pesa. M-Pesa. Okay, here's how this works. Vodafone in Kenya set up a system whereby you could buy minutes, store them on your phone. And then they set up the ability to share minutes with somebody else. So you could give somebody else minutes. You type in their number, type in how many minutes you want to give them. Well, suddenly that became a commercial engine. So I have 1 million minutes stored on my Mara phone, which cost me $100. I can send 600 minutes to buy a hamburger. I can send 2,000 minutes to buy a hotel room. Suddenly, the people who never had access to banks, had no way of storing capital, had no way of doing electronic commerce, have got an immediate source for electronic banking, electronic transfer, planet-wide. And it is now spread to Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, Afghanistan, Lesotho, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ghana, Mozambique, Egypt, Ethiopia, and I haven't figured this one out yet, Romania and India. I don't know why it's in Romania, but it's there. And so you can buy minutes, store them on your phone, and it becomes a form of electronic commerce. You get in a taxi, there's the taxi number for paying by M-Pesa. You type in the taxi number, send the minutes, you've paid for your taxi ride. Why can't we spread that across the Caribbean, Mexico, and Central America? 2/3 of the planet do not have access to adequate banking, and they pay horrendous fees for banking. This is a transparent, simple way of non-money commerce. And here's the important, the number I always like to read. There are 7 million M-Pesa accounts in Tanzania and 17 million in Kenya and it is credited for lifting 4% of the population of Kenya out of poverty in 4 years. Simply because they have the ability to bank, store money, and transfer money electronically.
That's really powerful. That link that you have, if you can,
Yep.
share that with us, and we'll make
Already
sure
have it. It's in
that's
chat.
there. Okay, perfect. The thing to actually do, the thing that actually I would love to have, because you're actually touching on currency, and we happen to have today one of the currency experts or cryptocurrency experts, Austin's one of Austin's top guys here as well. Paul, I know that you're a Mr. Bitcoin blockchain, cryptocurrency, crypto token. Tell us what your take on this as well.
Well, one of the real problems with injecting payment systems into these worlds are the platform, the need for the Samsung fund, but the other thing is crypto security. So the way Bitcoin wallets and other crypto wallets tend to work is they tend to connect to some node in the crypto system, and they end up kind of having to trust that node because they don't have the horsepower to run a full validating node on their phone, right? And so you're kind of offloading some of that crypto security. There is crypto that mitigates that to some degree, but it doesn't tend to be perfect. Now I'm working on a protocol that actually allows for a full validating node to run on a small phone and create the payment rails that give you absolute crypto security on tokens that you might hold in your phone. And by the way, I'm speaking in crypto, so I constantly talk about tokens. Tokens can be dollars, tokens can be local currency, tokens can be Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever. The first problem is, how do you secure them and how do you trade them and how do you track them? And so that's the problems I'm solving. I don't want to go talk too long, but here, to summarize, you need to be able to very securely run on a inexpensive platform, a phone. Now, I haven't heard your solution, so I'm Joel. So I'm really impressed with that. That is one of the missing pieces. The second thing you have to have is absolute security on that platform for the tokens that an individual needs. The dollars, the value. The third thing is it has to have a user model that is intuitive. So the user has to be able to understand what they're doing. If we're going to force people to look at 40 random characters and say their value is in those 40 random characters, that really isn't something that's going to work from a security aspect and from a user aspect. And lastly, you have to have the ability to handle volume of transactions and speed of transactions and low cost transactions.
Wait, so it's interesting to just take that I'll try to paint this picture, right? We're talking about this whole value chain around refugees, or more generally around shared prosperity, about how is it we get people out of harm's way. The things that I hear Joel and then I hear Paul talking about is there's ways, but because the person has the phone, there's a couple of key questions, and we're going to get, well, here's something from Joel and just a little bit about that, that Paul's pointing out, that part of the issue is, we have to have this, we have to have secure interactions possible. Because, if your hand, it's like the famous quote about, why do you rob the banks? It's because that's where the money is. But if the money is actually on your phone, you got to make sure it's secure so someone can't just break in, right? That's part of what Paul is saying. And again, we can imagine that, me sitting in this comfortable office in Austin, Texas, in the United States, with just a little bit of money. I was really surprised by how small amount of cash it can really change outcomes in other parts of the world. I have a specific example I could tell you about for Nigeria that we've talked about on the program before, but the same kind of idea. We can actually really do this. That's the main thing I want to keep on painting. Joel, do you have like 10 seconds more of insight about that, about how that phone might or might not solve the problem that Paul's pointing to?
Let me give
go ahead, Paul.
Let me give Joel just a little more rocket fuel, because there's one more aspect here, and that is digital identity. And so having a identity in your phone that can be constructed first by the individual and then by the network that they interoperate with, and having that run on the phone. Because I want Joel to be able to talk about how identity plus value is a very needed mixture.
And I will brag on Mara phones a little bit more here. I forgot to mention this because it's obvious to me. The Mara phones have facial recognition. They have fingerprint readers. So they have a built-in biometric engine already in the system. Because they're networked into any phone system, when you put that SIM card in, you now have an architecture. And because the M-Pesa, the account is held by the phone company, it's not on the phone. So if you lose your phone, if they don't have the biometric to open it, they can't access that money. You can pick up another phone, put the SIM card in, sign into the M-Pesa, do the biometric authentication, and you're back in business. And
I'd like to buy one of those phones just so I can play around with the techtechnology to
oh, it's a great phone. It's a great phone. I absolutely love it. It's got a
do you have
camera.
Do you have any to sell right now?
I've got an order coming, but I'm going to be in Portugal and Spain during September, and they're due to come after I get back.
That sounds perfect. Well, we'll make sure we have you back after you get to go on the
Okay.
Camino de Santiago.
I'm doing the Camino de Santiago de Portuguese. We're walking the coast of Portugal.
That's beautiful.
In an existing architecture of phones, you already have trust, you have a relationship, you have the ability to store, and the phone, the phone company knows how many minutes you bought. So there's your bank account. The phone is your gateway to access that, and transferring by number is the method. So when you walk up to a hamburger stand and there's the number on the wall, you tap in the number, you tap in the amount and send it. That's a pretty robust architecture using a minimal entry device. And like I said, the Mara phones start as cheap as $100. And the upper end ones, when we get to the Mara X, and and you can go to this site, I've already posted the link, but the Mara X, let's see, let me run the triple rear camera.
Well, so we'll do this. Throw it out there. It's like
go to the website and look at it. They're remarkable phones. I get a 20% discount when I order them, and I've been sending them to my people in Jamaica. With the idea they sell them.
What I'm going to do is I'll make sure that we get to follow up and I'll ask, before Joel disappears to Spain and Portugal, I'll collect a few more details from him about that, because I think it's an interesting enabling device, especially with regards to now that we have access as a community to the El Salvadorian government. We have guys like Paul Snow who know a lot about Bitcoin and everything that's happening there, that we're going to hear more about, coming soon, about the announcements that are happening there. Part of what we'll do is we'll make sure that this whole value chain concept that I've been seeing for, seen for a really long time, I think we can see the pieces come together. Kim Johnson, you came off of mute a little bit ago. Well, what is it you had a couple of things you wanted to impart, I think, as well.
Yeah, I come at it from a different way, just past experience. Two concepts. My wife, in addition to her, nonprofit consulting and strengths coaching, she's on the board of IACT. IACT is one piece of the Central Texas network that supports refugees. They provide, basically what they do is they provide English as ESL courses, and they do it facilitated in a church I used to run. I used to go to, and my wife's involved in another church now that actually has an undocumented person is living there, and I come at it from a different strength, and I provide the IACT name in there for additional resources. But we also had a church that was devoted to a missionary in Malawi, and there was a dedicated group of people that facilitated mission there and people coming over from Malawi. So just as everybody here is like involved in different things, there's people that can be mobilized to work together. And there's two things that I've always been frustrated about, some of which may be solved by Austin's, 211, and Aunt Bertha in terms of resources. But when you're dealing with people that are in a refugee situation, it's like when somebody has an outage at your telephone or cable company. If you can't get one answer, they call somebody else. So, for example, for housing services, one of the agencies, Caritas in Austin, used to open their phones from 8 to 8:30. If you didn't make that list and get on the list, you were then postponed to get any services. So in other words, the people that have least access to trying to, get access to communications, and it's kind of like the registration for COVID, right? People sitting on the computer 5 times. The issue is, how can you organize these people so that they can securely be in the pipeline and not have to spend every waking day waiting on the phone, as opposed to going out and getting a job, going out and doing other things for their family. And that has been always a big frustration to me. And so the elements are similar to what on this, your process here is, you said people didn't want to use Facebook, right? All these people that are refugees from other countries have concern. If I'm on the list, am I going to be targeted by the government, right? So some type of secure list that helps these people get to these agencies, because IACT has courses for ESL, but they're dependent upon the general services people who do the immigrations. You understand what I'm saying? There's a complex network of people that do that.
How about this? Would you consider reaching out to the appropriate person in that organization to join us at September 9th for a similar type of conversation? Because it'd be great to hear from him or her, and to look at how we can construct as part of the value chain together.
Yeah, I'll see if Simone I'll ask Carol to talk to Simone, the executive director.
That'd be cool. I think the target would be September 9th, or will probably be September 9th or September 23rd. But I'd love to shoot for September 9th, just to keep on building on this conversation.
And it may be, and it may be another agency, because again, that's one of their missions, but they can only deal with people that are allowed to come into the state, if you know what I mean.
Understood. Renee, you mentioned as well that you had a little bit of insight about something that was existing. Would you like to come off of mute and share with us?
Sure. Thanks for letting me talk about it. During the Obama administration, they offered phones for free to households with low incomes, and that is still available to anyone that wants it. It's possible to extend that to the refugee, I'm gonna call it a community. And then, if they were to upgrade the phones to a smartphone, create an app that has, listings of resources, job boards, and different, everything that they need within that one app. And then we would also, whatever, I know people don't like to be tracked by the government, but it would give us data to know where those folks are, so that we have a better idea as to where the resources are actually needed. So if we have a group that, you know, can, let's just use the ESL for an example, that could travel to that area and provide ESL services or English speaking services, then they would know where to go. It would just help disseminate the assistance, I think, a little more rapidly and more efficiently.
That's actually exciting. Would you actually, if you wouldn't mind taking the action item to follow up, and either if you know someone that could actually, or if you could talk more on the 9th to join us about that, or, you know, even just point the right person into the conversation. I think it's interesting, right? Because we have all these pieces. That's a perfect part of this. The main thing about it is, you know, if people don't know that it exists, it doesn't, right? You know, if you wouldn't mind, September 9th, that would be another rally point, and that I'd like to actually have us like look at how we can gain access to that information to then have that all the different points along the curve.
Sure, no problem.
That'd be great. Hey, well, so we're coming to the end of our hour. We've already had a couple people who have said that they've needed to step out and stuff like that. We try to keep these to an hour. Obviously, there's a lot more meat to this conversation, and it's so timely. I'm going to continue to take different inbound type of solutions for specifically for what's happening in Kabul and interact with this individual that I mentioned before. I'm going to try to talk him into coming on to the program as well on the 9th to see if he can join us. You know, just even if it's not for what's happening now in Afghanistan, but for, you know, how do we prep for the next one, right? It's an interesting set of questions about, you know, how do we actually organize and then create this for, I mean, you guys with your startups are so efficient on solving problems that I think that part of what I want to do is start organizing where we can go to market together and essentially, you know, target these solutions, target these problems and offer solutions. So with that, I'll start the wind down on the actual final things. Thank you for being here today. First off, I really like our discussion. I like the things that come out of this. If you have something for the show notes, you can post it into the chat or make sure that you can email it to me too. But right now, if you do have it, send it as quickly as possible because I'm going to hand it off to an assistant to try to do the follow-up because I'm not that great about doing all this stuff myself as being dyslexic. I want to make sure that you know that next week we will have Stephen Ayers talk about wealth management. We'll have a little bit of time before and after his conversation for if there's any questions specifically about what to follow up on this conversation. If you don't have access, same thing, on September 16th, we'll have Chris talk about LinkedIn. Thank you again to DualWorks for being our sponsor for this program. Part of what I want to make sure that we do is if you don't have access to the Tech Ranch, we have a mighty network that we're setting up right now. We're still kind of testing it out, but right now, because there's been such a need on interacting back and forth and kind of pushing it out a little bit sooner than I want to, just because the communication, getting y'all to interact with each other is the most critical thing. Go to techranch.mn.co, not com, but .co, techranch.mn, that stands for Mighty Network.co, and you can sign up for free on our community site. And if you want to be more involved and get involved in some of our first step of program, there is an option there as well to go ahead and get involved in the network. The key thing between the community and the network is community will want you to be involved. We want you to have access. The network, there are certain resources that we actually have hard cost associated with giving you access to that you can take advantage of. That also, we'll announce a few more programs coming out soon. We'll be bringing back Venture Start, Venture Forth, and forming cohorts around that. And we'll announce a campfire that we can take this to scale across the world very soon. So with that, I'm always honored to be able to hang out with entrepreneurs that are driven by vision and values like y'all are. Let's make sure that we bind together to go do exactly this. Let's go change the world for the better together. Thank y'all for your time today. We'll be back in contact. Hop on the network. And if you have questions for me, feel free to go ahead and send me emails or send me text if it's urgent. And let's see what we can go do to getting people out of harm's way. With that, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for your time today. Okay, take care. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot.